Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jessica Juliuson, and I'm from EDC, Education Development Center. We are a global nonprofit that advances lasting solutions to improve education, promote health, and expand economic opportunity. Since 1958, EDC has been a leader in designing, implementing, and evaluating powerful and innovative programs in more than 80 countries around the world, with a focus on vulnerable and underserved populations. And to that end, I lead the Supporting Readiness Through Vital Civic Empowerment, or SRVCE team. And I am delighted to welcome you all to today's event, where we will showcase and celebrate the power of civics education and the students and teachers who have engaged in the SRVCE Civics Education program over the last academic year. And really, most of all, we want to take this hour to just celebrate the joy of civic engagement. So the power it can have to change lives, the incredibly important preparation it gives everyone, especially our young people, to be engaged, informed, and prepared members of our workforce and democracy. While we know this is a time of incredible need for civic education in our country, we also know this should not be a burden, but rather it's a gift for students, an experience that not only builds essential skills, but is fun, powerful, and can make a meaningful difference. And for teachers, an opportunity to dig deep, to collaborate, and help students really see the why behind what they're learning. So as you can see from this map, the SRVCE pilot has reached multiple states, teachers, and students, many of whom we are lucky enough to be able to hear from today. Our goal was to pilot this unique curriculum in all kinds of places, from large to small, urban to rural, with the overarching goal of supporting all students to develop not just civic understanding, but also an ethic of service. We knew this curriculum needed to be practical, meaningful, and actually usable by teachers. And our pilot teachers have just been invaluable in telling us what works and what doesn't as we've developed these resources over the last 2 years. It's our hope that by equipping young people all over the country, particularly students who have been historically underrepresented in STEM fields and in high-skill, high-wage jobs, to not only see how civics connects to their future, but to inspire them to shape it. Now, I know that we're very anxious to get to the main event, but I do want to take just a moment to say a heartfelt thank you to the Department of Defense, and specifically the National Defense Education Program, for having not just the will, but the funds to advance civic education as part of their national STEM strategy. We are lucky enough to have a few of our DoD colleagues joining us today. So if you have been part of the SRVCE pilot, please, if you have a moment, thank them for making this program possible. If you're doing something great through SRVCE, let them know via social media. You can see here they have a handle on Twitter, and you can tag them at @DoD-STEM. And we know that many of us started off saying STEM and civics, but why? But how? And thanks to this project, we have been able to help our young people, and many adults too, answer that question. So this slide to me really tells a story of what's possible when different organizations come together to build something new. We have an absolutely incredibly rich network of partners who are supporting the SRVCE project. As you can see on this slide, we have been incredibly fortunate to have the support of so many organizations who are thought leaders and experts from across many domains. As many of you know, the SRVCE curriculum was intentionally designed to weave together civics, media literacy, and career readiness, all through a STEM lens. And this would not have been possible without the incredible partners who have helped us along the way. This coalition that you see here, in addition to our team of advisors from the worlds of equity and civics, media literacy, military service, and career readiness, has allowed us to draw from the best and most impactful strategies in each domain. So we do want to start by thanking the Teaching Institute for Excellence in STEM, or TIES, who have really led the way in reimagining what STEM looks like at the human technology frontier, and what this means for what we need to be doing in our nation's classrooms. Their interdisciplinary and immersive vision for STEM education has really helped us confirm and solidify our message that civics belongs in STEM. We've also been extremely fortunate to partner with both the National Career Academy Coalition and the Law and Public Safety Education Network, or LAPSN, who have been essential in helping us think through essential career skills and proficiencies that our workforce needs, and ensuring that these skills are not only integrated into the SRVCE curriculum, but that they're assessed in a robust enough way that students can carry these skills with them as they go on to college and career. Supporting us with media literacy principles, strategies, and resources is our wonderful partner, the National Association for Media Literacy Education, or NAMELY. They have been critical to helping us embed media literacy not as an add-on, but as a way of gathering and processing information from all kinds of media as a way of working and as an essential habit of mind. We were also thrilled to find out that we were able to collaborate with StoryCorps, who has generously contributed incredible personal stories of service from their vast and powerful collection. Hearing firsthand from veterans, public servants, and ordinary people can bring civic decision-making to life in a way that a textbook or a slide deck can never do. We are so grateful for their media-making talents and commitment to public education. And last, but certainly not least, we have our amazing civics partners. The National Council for the Social Studies have been incredibly supportive as they ensure our work is grounded in the standards and requirements for public social studies and civic education, particularly their vital framework for college, career, and civic life, otherwise known as the C3 framework, and our teachers are definitely familiar with it. Generation Citizen has been a powerful leader in getting kids engaged, helping them understand their own communities and local systems, helping them truly experience the part they can play in growing and shaping their own neighborhoods, cities, and states. And I want to make a very special thank you to Generation Citizen for committing to amplify the voices of young people in our democracy. Their national work with schools to practice hands-on civic education, legislative advocacy, and coalition building in conjunction with youth leadership development really teaches young people how to have a voice and become active citizens in their communities. We are so fortunate that they have been a steadfast partner in this work, and I'm really honored at this time to introduce Generation Citizen's Chief Partnerships Officer, Ariel Jennings, who is going to be our MC for this wonderful celebration and showcase. So without wasting any more time talking, I'll turn things over to Ariel. Ariel?
Thank you, Jessica. And hello, everyone, and welcome. I am thrilled to be with you all today to steward us all through the program. It is great to see so many partners, teachers, and students joining us today. And we want to give a very special shout out to kick this off to the students joining us who have participated in the service program this year and engaged civically in their communities. As Jessica shared, during the showcase today, we will first and foremost celebrate the importance of civic learning and the efforts of students and teachers who have worked so hard over the last year and a half to design and pilot the Service Civics program across the country. We will also share more with you about the service program itself, so you all have a deeper insight into what makes this program such a powerful civic learning experience. We will hear from teachers and students about their experience in the program and why civics matters to them. And finally, we will share gratitude along the way, as Jessica has already begun, for the many partners that have made this new civic learning program possible. So we would like to begin by elevating the voices of and drawing inspiration from 3 young people who acted as service student advisors over the last year and provided deep feedback to inform the design of the service program and curriculum, Leah, Leo, and Anya. We asked them why civic education matters to them and why it is important for youth to be active in our communities and democracy. So we'll hear some words from them now.
Civics is important to me because we are very fortunate to live in a democratic country. I think when you have the choice to participate in society and you choose not to, you risk forfeiting that choice in the future. But right now, we have the opportunity to know our rights and responsibilities so that we can change policies and hold leaders accountable to ensure that our government can serve us the best it can on both the state and national level. Civic education is important because we also have the opportunity to empower future generations to do the same, to ensure that our government can represent everyone fairly and equally. It's vital that you use your voice so that you are represented by the government.
It's very important to understand that you do have the right to speak up. You do have the right to have your voice heard. And I also think that as youth, we have this outlook and perception on society and on the government that a lot of people who are older or who have grown up in under these governments don't necessarily have, because I don't know, I have these conversations with some of my friends and people in my community, and they often use the term jaded, and how a lot of times people who have grown up under these different governments become jaded and they become used to what's going on. And whereas youth, we have this kind of really cool power that we're like, it doesn't have to be like this. You know, we're not as jaded. We don't see things, like, we understand the historical context, but we don't see things as in, oh, this is all we can take. Because we always understand that there's so much more that we can do, and there's so much more that we should be able to be doing, that it's incredibly important for youth to have their voices heard, especially because we can't vote. Well, I can vote now, but youth can't vote. And I mean, that's only one way that you can get involved in your government and civically involved. There's so many other ways, like I said, calling your legislators and doing all of these different things, petitioning, canvassing, anything you want to be able to do, you can do it. And as a youth, there's nothing that says that you can't.
It's super important for youth to be involved in our communities, in our democracy, and informed about civics education, because they're the people that are going to be assuming the structures that we're currently functioning in. If students aren't being informed about how these processes work and why they should care about them, they're going to become uninformed adults. And the cycle then continues. They don't teach their kids. And we reach a society where less and less people care about democracy, less people are involved in local government or state programs, less people are informed about what's going on, and there's a lost sense of community. So starting with the youth and building that foundation is super important, so that education around this and efforts in civics programs continues into the future, and so that we have a solid society of well-informed and well-rounded adults in the coming years.
We hope that these words inspired each of you and connected you to the importance of civic learning. It is absolutely evident from these students' words just how ready and eager young people are to have a greater voice and role in our democracy. For me, it was wonderful to hear Leah, our first student advisor, bring attention to the responsibility we have to become civically informed and active as members of a democratic society. Thank you to Leo for elevating how young people can overcome being jaded by the political process through engaging civically in so many different ways, even before they are old enough to vote. And finally, it was so inspiring to hear from Anya about how important it is to build a civically informed electorate by ensuring youth early on in their lives have access to quality civic education. A shout out to these three young leaders and all of the student advisors who have made the service program so meaningful and really reflect youth voice and input. Now I am pleased to introduce Reagan Davenport, who will share in more detail about the service program and curriculum. Reagan is the professional learning lead for service at EDC and has been the key leader in the creation and piloting of the service program. She is here today to help us learn more about the elements of service.
Hello, it's so nice to be with you today. Thank you, Ariel. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be a part of this showcase for service and to see and hear about all of the amazing experiences from our teachers and their students, and just their overall engagement and excitement about civics and our democracy. I am excited to share an overview of the service curriculum with you and would like to take the opportunity to tell you more about the service curriculum modules. Funded by DoD STEM, service encompasses user-friendly, localized civics curriculum for high school students, which includes 5 inquiry-based modules that incorporate media literacy, career skill development and exploration, and align with national and regional standards, including career and technical education. Service also includes design and delivery of professional learning materials and a teacher toolkit. Because the foundational components of the service curriculum are rooted in inquiry-based learning activities that advocate student agency, students follow a civic inquiry and action framework, which allows teachers the opportunity to facilitate this process with students while keeping student agency front and center. It empowers students to start with their self and progress through these stages of inquiry and action, sharing and reflecting throughout, but especially at the end of the process. We have 5 service curriculum modules designed around the following themes. Module 1 is designed around the theme of duty and service. Module 2 designed around the theme of voice and persuasion. Module 3 is power and influence. Module 4, loyalty and dissent. And Module 5 is change and impact. And just to note, Module 5 can also be used to prepare students for a capstone experience should they choose to explore that option. So we've got the 5 curriculum modules around these themes. Each module consists of 15 lessons that should be able to be completed within a 3-week time frame. Now, some of those lessons are combined, so they could be completed in 2 sessions depending on the teacher's schedule, but they have been designed to be approximately between 45 and 60 minutes each. The modules are aligned to the College, Career, and Civic Life, or C3 Standards Framework, Common Core Standards, and Career and Workforce Pathways. And as Jessica Juliuson mentioned earlier, our partnership with the NCSS will allow us the opportunity to make sure that they are also fully aligned to social studies and civic standards as well. Now, we want to give you a sneak peek at a couple of types of activities that students can engage in with the service curriculum. This example comes from an activity in Module 1, which was titled Duty and Service, which asked students to look around their communities to get ideas about ways that other young people in their community are participating with civic engagement. This prompts students to think about what civic participation looks like, and the prompt questions guide them in beginning to formulate a project idea from what they observe in their community. The service curriculum also aims to support students' thinking around the idea that just like high quality civics, high quality STEM, wrong slide. This is the I Am poem. This poem is giving students the opportunity to work through the civic inquiry and action arc, and they always begin with themselves. So the goal of this activity is to have students contemplate issues that they care about. Now, the service curriculum aims to support students thinking around the idea that just like high quality civics, high quality STEM is hands-on and experiential. This is an example from Module 5, titled Change and Impact, where we are asking students to reflect on how their personal attributes translate into actions that can bring change within their community. Our next example is a resource from the service curriculum, also found in Module 5, Change and Impact, that is designed to help students build their project plan piece by piece. Students are going to translate their I Am poem, which you saw in the previous slide, the responses to that poem, and address the first 2 questions in the Civic Action Planner. Note that the thing that they would like to change in the community is where students are starting to generate ideas for their project focus issue. And asking students to take note of their inspiration is an attempt to ground the project in their own personal interests and honor their voice and choice. We also ask students to look at career and workforce connections throughout the service curriculum. And one of those connections is around the intersection of civics and STEM. We want students thinking about the ways that civic issues can be addressed through a STEM lens. In STEM careers, professionals need to solve problems all the time, and they often use a framework called the Engineering Design Process, or EDP for short. This relates to engineering as a verb and not a discipline. We introduce students to the process in service and ask them to look for connections between the engineering design process and the Civic Inquiry and Action Arc, Students should be able to explain how they may be similar and identify which stage of the engineering design process they are in. Finally, in addition to the 5 modules, Service also offers a teacher toolkits for teachers to use as a companion to the Service curriculum. The Service Teacher Toolkit offers guidance and professional development resources for teachers around the core components of Service. We ask teachers to reference the Teacher Toolkit prior to beginning any module so that they can get guidance and support around foundational pieces for having a positive classroom environment in which to explore Service. And we also reference the Teacher Toolkit throughout the lessons in each module. That concludes the overview of what the Service curriculum is, and I hope that you have a better understanding of both the curriculum, the modules, and the resources that we offer. Back to you, Ariel.
Thank you so much, Reagan, for offering us such great insight into the Service modules and curriculum. We now want to turn towards hearing the voices of the incredible educators and students that have been at the core of piloting Service in schools across the country this school year. We have asked them to share their experiences with you and as leaders of civic learning and engagement. First, we will hear from Kim Bundy, a Service teacher from New Bern, North Carolina, teaching at New Bern High School. We asked him to reflect on the importance of civic education to her and youth engagement in the community.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Bundy, and I am one of 3 civic literacy teachers at New Bern High School in New Bern, North Carolina. When I reflect on the experiences gained by both me and my students as participants in the Service program, it renews my understanding of why civic education matters as a teacher and why it is important for youth to be engaged in their communities. For me, there are 2 main reasons why civic education matters as a teacher. Civic education is important because it helps to create informed citizens, which in return promotes youth engagement in their communities. When I think of being an informed citizen, the adage, knowledge is power, comes to mind. Loosely translated, knowledge is power simply means the more one knows, the more one will be able to control events. So, what is knowledge? Knowledge is a valuable resource that empowers individuals and enables them to 1, make informed decisions, 2, act, and 3, achieve their goals. Civic education teaches students about the democratic process and those institutions that govern our society. Once students understand the democratic process and those institutions, they begin to understand not only their rights, but also the responsibilities and duties of citizenship, as well as the role played by government and its responsibilities to citizens. So, why is it important for youth to be engaged in their communities? It is important for youth to be engaged in their communities because it gives youth empowerment. Youth engagement empowers youth to take part in the decisions that affect them. Youth engagement teaches youth how to communicate, how to work together as a team, and how to problem solve. It helps to build leadership skills and resilience, as well as other skills. All skills that are transferable to other areas. In closing, I would like to end with a quote from John F. Kennedy's inaugural address. In this quote, Kennedy inspired adults and children to see the importance of civic engagement and public service. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We are so grateful to you, Ms. Bundy, for sharing these inspirational words and giving us insight into the impact of the Service program from an educator's perspective. Your words were particularly powerful to me when you shared that youth civic engagement doesn't just help communities, but builds essential skills in young people like teamwork, problem solving, and leadership, skills that young people can use in all aspects of their lives and into adulthood. I am now pleased to introduce Asma Ilyas, a student at the College Preparatory School of America in Lombard, Illinois. Her teacher is Asim Ghaffar, who piloted service this year, and we'd like to extend a special shout out to Mr. Ghaffar and all of his students today. Let's listen to Asma reflect on her experience with civic inquiry and action supported through service.
My name is Asma Ilyas, and I love learning about history. Through the service program, I found the ability to critically think and question sourcing. There's a lot of influenced news and sources online, so by doing source analysis and researching primary sources, I was able to create a campaign on advocacy for the political integrity of an ally nation in Ukraine by reflecting on the past. I was able to submit my campaign to a Ukrainian organization to highlight and enhance my messaging. As I get ready to graduate high school, I now know that my voice is powerful, and with the right research and encoding, I can help educate and positively influence others. There is a need for voices like mine in American discourse. We may not always agree, but we will be a stronger nation with more voices represented.
A huge thank you to Asma for sharing how the service program impacted you. The depth of research that you did about your community issue using primary sources and how you then turned that research into the basis for an actionable campaign represents the civic leader that you are already and that we would all inspire to be. And again, I just want to give a special shout out to you and your class who are on the webinar today. Thank you so much for all the incredible work you have done this year. So to round out showcasing the voices of educators and students, we will hear from one more teacher, Thomas Fulbright, who teaches at Hope Street Academy in Topeka, Kansas. He will share his perspective on how he defines high quality civic learning and the power of the service program.
To me, I think of our American government textbook, and I see this as kind of an operator's or owner's manual for a car, if you will. That'll be the analogy I'm going to go with. So considering it as an owner's manual for a car, when does a young person become interested in what that owner's manual actually says? Do they have any interest in what it says when they're 12, 13, 14? Not really. It's when they are learning to drive. It's when they are actually operating the machine that knowledge becomes important. And I think it's very much the same way with the content inside this book. To a student sitting in their rows of desks and listening to a lecture, is this material important? I'd like to believe that it is, but what matters is whether or not they think it is. And I'm going to imagine, from my experience, to most of them it's not yet important. But if you're getting students engaged in the processes of trying to do something, they find out just like when they're operating the car, the knowledge becomes so much more important when they're learning why that light is flashing check engine, or when they're trying to find where the jack is so they can replace the tire. The knowledge is important when the knowledge becomes useful. So services program and focusing on getting students actively engaged is an opportunity that they will see why this knowledge is important. They're not going to care how city government works until they're trying to get the city to fix potholes. Something like that from my students' experience in one of their projects. To me, civic knowledge is how we teach students to operate the machines of government. They're the next drivers of our democracy, and the more we can prepare them for that, the better drivers they're going to be. These students that are sitting in our classrooms are the ones who are going to be making the decisions that affect all of our communities. Their community is most important. So I think teachers wanting to make their students care about what they're doing, they need to give their students a reason to care. The students need to see why what they're doing is useful. And maybe through the civic engagement, it actually becomes the student's idea to get this knowledge. If they're wanting to figure out how to cause change, if they're trying to address the problems, then they're the one that has to find out that there's 3 branches of government and they need to go to the legislature for this specific concern they have, or they need to write the governor or the president for this specific concern. When they have it more in their hands, it's all about the outcome, right? And to me, that's why what Service is trying to do is really essential for all of our school programs. The purpose, English classes, kids need to learn how to write. History classes, social studies classes, they need to learn to participate in our civil society.
Thank you, Mr. Fulbright. The analogy of civic action to driving a car is a powerful one and shines a light on how important it is to make civics relevant by not just teaching civic knowledge, but through engaging in real world civics, which of course is a core tenet of each of the service modules. We must position young people in the driver's seat of democracy. Before we move on to the next speaker, I want to give a very special shout out to you, Mr. Fulbright, and your entire classroom of students who participated in the service program this year. Great job, and thank you all. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Garrett Baggett from the Department of Defense STEM National Defense Education Program, to share some remarks.
Thank you, Ariel, and greetings to all. I'm Garrett Baggett, and I'm privileged to be representing DoD STEM, which is in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. First, I'd like to thank the Education Development Center, and particularly the service team, Jessica, Tony, Wendy, and the key partners that you're working with, Ariel, for organizing today's exciting showcase. And it's delightfully exciting for me to be at the Civic Showcase and celebrate with you today. By way of a brief introduction to the relationship between DoD and DoD STEM. DoD STEM is inclusive of STEM efforts across the Department of Defense, or DoD, that address both long and short-term STEM workforce needs via STEM programs for the entire K through 20 continuum. DoD STEM efforts include opportunities for students like the ones that are online here, via summer camps, competitions, internships, apprenticeships, and scholarships, and also teachers via online resources, professional development, and fellowships. In fiscal year 2020, DoD STEM supported over 200 programs, reaching about or over 1 million students, and also educators, about 30,000 or 30,000 plus educators across the 50 states. You may ask, why is DoD and DoD STEM invested in STEM talent? Now, Jess gave you a quick introduction with the reasons for having a civics program in this STEM field, but with the DoD side, why are we interested in it? So with We have nearly 300,000 STEM professionals. So DoD is now the largest employer of scientists and engineers in the federal government. And to maintain our nation's competitive advantage, we require a diverse, agile, and sustainable STEM talent pool. But however, DoD can't do this alone. DoD STEM partners with nonprofits, nonprofit organizations, industry, academia, local and federal, state, government agencies who share these similar STEM missions and can reach students and educators across the US. And we're proud to call the Education Development Center and its partners one of our partners as well. Now you may be thinking EDC is performing civics education with their grant work. So what does civics have to do with STEM and DoD? We're facing very complex global challenges such as climate change, dependence on diminishing natural resources. So now more than ever, we need critical and innovative thinkers, as well as engaged citizens to address these complex challenges today and into the future. This is where you come in. As student participants, educators, and civics professionals, you are developing into and helping to develop our future workforce that thinks more critically, that understands how governments work, that stays informed and engaged in civics life. Our nation's capabilities are a direct outcome of our nation's educators and our education system. The products of the work you do now end up in our judiciary systems, our legislative systems, our governing systems, our research and lab facilities, our technology hubs, and our armed services. Everything we do rests on the backs of what you do. So in the spirit of this National Teacher Appreciation Week, I want to thank all of the educators here for what you continue to do for our students, our schools, and our communities. I loved hearing from the teachers and the student speakers and the service student advisors, and we at DoD STEM appreciate each of you. To the participants and everyone else here and involved, we appreciate all of your hard work that has culminated in this civic showcase. If I may leave you with the first words of a speech of President Teddy Roosevelt, that my 7th grader chose to give in front of her schoolmates. It is peculiarly incumbent upon you who have strength to set a right example to others. Let me repeat that because I had the same trouble with a couple of words that she did. It is peculiarly incumbent upon you who have strength to set a right example to others. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to spend this time with you, and I wish each of you, civics educators and students alike, the strength of knowledge and commitment of service. And I have the privilege of turning it back to EDC's Jessica Juliuson, I believe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Baggett. And that was really inspiring. I'm always jotting down some of the quotes and specific examples people give as they talk about their experience with service or with civics more generally. So I wanted to say a couple of things as I've listened to our fantastic teachers and students and advisors. I think that one of the things that has really come home to me as our team has worked on this project over the last couple of years has been just what a national imperative it is to be focusing again on civics. And civics really, to me, is not something that's kind of the trivia contest that I remember experiencing as a student myself, where you kind of try to spit back sort of pieces of information, dates, places, people. But rather it's about that kind of connective fabric of our communities. And so to me, that's what has just emerged as perhaps the most important piece of this project overall, and what we're hearing from our teachers and from our students. I want to appreciate for a moment the fact that our students and teachers took the time to talk to us today, which is itself an act of civic engagement. So we appreciate you being part of this community, and we hope that more people across the country will choose to become part of the service community over time. There are a couple of things that I wanted to mention as you think about what is service, what could it mean for you, for your school, for your students, for your communities, for STEM. And I think as we've talked with our partners, one of the things that we've been seeing over the past several years has been that we're starting to see again a convergence of fields that for a long time have really been separated. And so as we've been at some conferences and talked to teachers and partners, and they've talked about this perception of a war between STEM and humanities, that somehow it's one or the other. And if you advantage one, you disadvantage the other. And so through this project, we've really worked to try to reduce that kind of perception and show more what those bridges are between the two. So as we have worked to strengthen and scaffold our nation's STEM capabilities, we've at times done this without actually recognizing the influence and the impact of other disciplines. Whereas the real world is really not one discipline. It's not siloed into English or social studies or CTE. And so student inquiry should not be siloed like that either. And one of the things that I feel I've been most excited about has been to see our pilot teachers getting excited about the connections between civics and STEM. It's a new way of thinking about civics. And I know we were lucky enough to have a few teachers with us at the TIES STEM learning ecosystem convening. And they were on fire. They were lit up by all the new ideas they were hearing about how civics can connect to STEM from people who don't see themselves as civics teachers per se. And so as our teachers learn how to do that, they can help their students make those connections too. And so from our perspective, the more real learning can be, the more authentic and transferable learning can be. And so we encourage all of you who are listening, whether you use the service curriculum or not, that you be thinking in that way about how do we make the world less siloed, less discipline focused, more convergent, and try to find the connections. And so connection, as you hear, has been really a key word for us throughout this webinar. I'd like to share a couple of pieces of information about what's next for the curriculum itself, and then a few words before we wrap up our webinar for today. So first, I wanted to let everyone know that our curriculum is under final revisions as we speak. Again, thank you to our advisors and pilot teachers and students for telling us what works, what doesn't work. We have been working tirelessly to try to get everything updated to include all of your feedback, and we should have a final launch scheduled for September 2023. And at that point, people say, well, how much will it cost? How will I get it? It is not something you need to purchase. It is going to be freely available. We will ask you to do a free registration just so we know where service is being used, but you can access that at the EDC service website, which we'll show in just a second. A couple of things to let you know, since we are in the process of revising and it's not there yet, you may want to get updates about the status of the curriculum. So if you go to our website at edc.org/service, you will see updates on the status of the curriculum, how you can access it, and we will also be sharing updates via our very new Twitter handle @ServiceCivics. And you can also email any of our project team. So we will be making a launch announcement very soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that as well. The next thing that I wanted to do is just, as we bring this webinar to a close, is take a moment and acknowledge the state of not just civics, but of our nation, the challenges and the promise. And so I wanted to say a couple of things. Sometimes there is a perception that when students engage in civic action, that it is in some way to point out everything that's wrong, or that it has a kind of a deficit approach. And I think what we want to try to reframe and to remind people about is that civic engagement is something that is exciting and joyful and affirming of this incredible democracy that we live in. And so I think what we've been hearing from our students is that they are finding joy in the projects that they're doing, in participating, in becoming part of their community. And so I really want to emphasize the fact that the promise is something that requires civic engagement as much as the challenges. And so there are three things that I want to kind of emphasize as we close out today. One is that we know young people want to be democratically engaged, and they do get engaged civically in all kinds of ways, many of which adults don't recognize because they're happening in digital environments. So those of us who still refer to news, I read the paper, or, kind of went old school research to the library, we may not be as aware of what civic engagement can look like on these digital platforms. And it's one of the reasons why media literacy has become such a crucial component of civic connection and civic action. The second thing that is especially important is that grounding civic decisions in good information and deciding what actions to take isn't something that you just do naturally. It requires practice, coaching, and authentic opportunities to engage with the community. And high school is a time when you can do that and practice and learn to get it right with the support of your teachers. And so we really feel it's vitally important for students not just to read about civics, but to do civics, to practice it, to try it out, to see what's hard, to see what's easy, but then be able to talk about the skills they grew as they engaged with their communities. And finally, education leaders and lawmakers need to support teachers in making space in their classrooms for students to get civic practice. Exploring events and policies in their own communities can not only provide opportunities for that practice, but it can help them develop those transferable skills that have meaning and benefit when they apply to college or careers. So perhaps because we all experienced the world shutting down for a couple of years and that hard road to recovery and re-engagement, we can find even more power in what it means to be connected. And I mean, really connected with our communities and with each other in a commitment to make the world a better place. So to do good, to help others. And as I said when we first began this hour, this commitment can be and should be joyful. It can make meaning in our lives, and it can truly engage the next generation and the generation after that in becoming part of the fabric of our national and global community. And you all who have joined us today, because you're here and you've been part of this work and of this moment, you can thank yourselves for being part of it. So I'm going to issue everyone who's on this webinar today to take on the assignment that we asked of service students in Module 1, which is to take a moment to stop, to look around your community, observe all the civic engagement that is happening, celebrate it, emulate it, and think about things you want to be connected to yourself. So on that note, we invite you all to please stay engaged with our service community and to help us spread the word about the curriculum. And we would also like to say a special thanks today to Ariel Jennings for being our wonderful MC. And of course, we want to thank all of our pilot teachers, our students, those of you who are with us today and those who are not, our advisors and our partners for bringing this idea to life. And for any of you who joined us just because you were curious, because you were interested, weren't sure what it was, we thank you for making the time today to learn about this project. And we hope it inspired you to serve in whatever way you choose to serve, and that you can take some of this spark away with you after the webinar is done. So thanks to all of you for being here, and thank you for your commitment to civic education.